Hello and welcome to a Very Explosion Network Christmas, a podcast dedicated to the merriest of holidays, the festive season with films about Santa, snow, and of being left home alone, the time of year when we all come together and argue if Lethal Weapon is a Christmas movie. I'm your host, Ashley Hobley, and helping me grow my heart's three sizes with Christmas cheer is Dylan Blight.
Ho, ho, ho! Hey, Mrs. Claus.
Alright, on today's episode of A Very Explosion Network Christmas, we're talking about The Santa Claus 2.
Look out!
Who is that?
Chet, one of our reindeer in training.
Please tell me that this is early in Chet's training.
Everything was going great, but this year Santa ran into a little problem.
I've got to get married? These fit yesterday, didn't they?
The identification process has begun.
Are you Santa Claus?
Or would you ask me something like that?
Do you have a reindeer?
There's a lot of people have reindeer.
Name 5.
We have Coco, we have a blanket, we have a horse-drawn sleigh. The only thing it's snowing. It's like some kind of magic.
I'm Santa Claus.
What?
Originally released November 1st, 2002, directed by Michael Lembeck, screenplay by Don Reimer, Cinco Paul, Den Daurio, Ed Decter, John J. Strauss. Story by Leo Benvenuti, Steve Rudnick, based on characters by Leo Benvenuti and Steve Rudnick, starring Tim Allen, Eric Lloyd, Judge, Reinhold, Wendy Crewson, David Krumholtz, Elizabeth Mitchell, and Spencer Breslin. Scott Calvin realizes that, as per the rules, he needs to get married quickly. However, things get complicated when his son's name appears on the naughty list. Dylan, is this movie on your naughty or nice list?
I'd say it's on my nice list. I think I like the Santa Claus 2. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as the first film. But I still think it's a bit of fun. I like Elizabeth Mitchell in this. I think I like the whole idea of getting married so quickly is just dumb. But you sort of I give it a little bit of a pass for the sake of this fairy tale setting, story sort of thing that you have happening here. That's totally fine. But yeah, I enjoy seeing David Krumholtz, of course, or however you say his name. Sorry, I forgot. Bernard's always I love how this is like 10 years. They filmed it like, I don't know, like 10 years after the first one.
8 years, 7 years, something like that. Yeah,
there you go. Yeah, it doesn't look like his age of Dana, to be honest. But they replaced Laura though. What the hell's going on? I never clicked onto that. I've never watched these movies so fast back to back, but it's completely different.
What are you talking about?
Isn't she completely different actors?
For Laura, his ex-wife?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Isn't it? Oh, she looked completely different.
Wow.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm telling you, she looked completely different.
8 years will do that to you.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
When did the first movie come out?
1994.
Let's scroll all the way back here. Holy shit, it is the same actress. Don't look anything alike.
Yeah.
How the fuck does
someone changes their hair a little bit and they look like a completely different person.
Bernard doesn't age today. Meanwhile, what's the actress's name?
Wow.
Wendy Crewson. So I'm so sorry, Wendy. I really thought you was a completely different lady. Anyway, nice addition to this one, I would say, is what's her name? Lucy.
Lucy, the little girl.
I assume is just like
is Neil and Laura's daughter.
Yeah, like their daughter. I think she's like obviously adds a lot of fun and charm. Like she fills in the gap of having Charlie be a teenager in this one. And then Curtis, I think, is a lot of fun as well. Who sticks around for the third one? I actually quite enjoy. You don't like Curtis? I enjoy
Fuck
Curtis.
No. Curtis is the cause of all the problems.
He is the cause of all the problems. He's a cosmo about Curtis. And then Toy Tim Allen, I think, is surprisingly still works. Like, there's a lot of like bad special effects and stuff in here, and I don't know if it's because the toy thing. Maybe it's like more of a makeup effect and stuff like that. Maybe that's why it sort of looks a bit better. But yeah, like at the start of the movie when you got like flying elves and stuff like that, you're like, oh, this looks rough. This looks worse than the first movie, especially watching them a week apart as we're doing it. But yeah, I think the toy Tim Allen is just really hammy, and you can tell Tim Allen just gets to have a bit of fun with that, like, ho, ho, ho! ho ho ho.
Yep.
You know, like all that sort of stuff is a lot of fun. I like rule, like when he drinks the
Hot chocolate.
hot chocolate stuff. He's like, whoa,
I'm getting a buzz.
Yes. All of that's I think pretty fun. So yeah, overall I think the movie's fun, enjoyable time. I don't think it has the heart that the first film has that makes it as special as we discussed last week and a like real gem of a Christmas movie. But I still think this is pretty fun.
Yeah, I would definitely put this on my nice list as well, although it's not as far up the nice list as the Santa Claus. Yeah, the first thing that kind of struck me is this is set in 2000. This came out in 2002, which is bizarre to me because I felt like I watched it before as I was a kid, but I would have been like a teenager at this point. It even I'm like, she's got a Kim Possible poster on her wall. That's like it kind of blew my mind a little bit that this obviously came out so late. But yeah, obviously they went a lot more campy and ratchet up the. I think they looked at the first movie and they went, what bits did the kids like the most? And it was the elf squad and the reindeers and all that kind of stuff. And they're like, let's double down on all these aspects and ratchet it up to 100. And that's pretty much what they did. Yeah, I mean, obviously toy Santa is a fun idea. I don't know why Santa would agree to have done that in the first place, though. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Why not just let Bernard run the place for like the 28
they say
days?
that it's like Santa needs to be there. It's like more or less explaining it as like a morale boost, or like Santa has to be there, which makes sense, I guess. Like it's literally coming into Christmas. Like he should be there for Christmas.
Just why'd you have to make it sentient though? You know what I mean?
I know.
Also, they give absolutely no explanation for this device as they walk in. You know what I mean?
I assume it's just something like they build a good toy, and then they're able to duplicate it.
I guess, but again, they never explain.
Nah.
Why would they do that? It's silly. Yeah, the whole 28 days falling in love thing. Okay, whatever. It's a classic story, I guess.
It is really just a fairy tale.
It is. And they treat the whole romance like a fairy tale-esque thing. I guess it also helps that it's like it's meant to be a kids movie, and this is two grown adults having a romance. Is like that's not really what kids want. They just want it. They don't want nuanced adult relationships.
No, that's the other thing. You always got to remember this is a kids movie.
Yeah. And of course he has to fall in love with he doesn't really have to fall in love with her. Like I guess their first like positive interaction is at the community center when they're gotten the kids to clean up the graffiti and stuff.
They have their first positive the time he shows up. The second time he gets caught, and then he's the one who comes to the school.
Yeah, but you don't understand straight away why Scott's like, hey, this is the one.
No, but they have a few back and forth jokes then or whatever.
And he's like, yeah, I could see myself spending the rest of my life with this person.
Yeah.
Let's double down.
He brings her the coffee at the community service like the following day.
Yeah.
And then they have their whole back and forth, and then obviously the date and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the whole date thing, super nice and charming. Although I think she should have been a little bit more creeped out by this guy suddenly having a horse and carriage. And
it's pretty
we make a shitty time.
Yeah, pretty intense for a first date that he never actually planned to go on, and literally just shows up, and then she's like, "Do you want to come to like my Christmas faculty party?" And then he's like, "Yeah, sure. Lucky I prepared this horse and carriage."
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the Christmas party. I love that whole sequence. How he turns that whole thing around.
It is a depressing little party until
it's probably like an actual that's what we would actually imagine school teachers are like. At a Christmas party, just all depressed.
It goes from one end to another. It goes from them all standing around depressed to once they get their favorite
childhood toys,
kids, they're sitting on the floor, like sending, like shoes off. They're like playing with their toys,
yeah, it's pretty enjoyable. Yeah, the whole romancing, it's fine. You've got the classic, hey, guess what? I'm Santa, and her not believing him. It is pretty unbelievable.
At least it doesn't last too. It doesn't last.
It doesn't
At least
last
it wasn't
too
like
long.
I'm glad it wasn't a main point. Like they don't like have it happen in the middle of a movie and then you have like half the movie of her like having all these conversations with people to eventually believe him. It's more of like it's very like it's just whatever.
Yeah.
Like suddenly she's at the North Pole.
It does feel very, even though it's the 28 days, I don't think the timeline of this film, it doesn't feel like it takes place over 28 days. It feels like it takes over place for like a week and a half, maybe.
Yeah, there's days you don't see.
Yeah,
They
there
don't
must
give
be.
you the full
Yeah.
28 days. Yeah, there's weeks you don't see.
Yeah, so that's all fine.
I do like their chemistry though. That's why I think it works.
They're great together, so it works. It doesn't make a lot of sense where it's like, hey, I need to get married, and it's like, yeah, okay.
No, all that part's dumb.
Talk about peer pressure.
Yeah. That whole thing's dumb. But as I said, I'm giving it a pass because it's a kids movie. And
fairy tales,
like
magic,
tale
that bullshit.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff. I'm just giving it a pass for that. But yeah, it helps that they do the actors, actresses, the Mrs. and Mrs. The Mr. and Mrs. The would-be Mr. and Mrs. The clauses.
The clauses.
Real clauses, not the clauses
Good,
on the card.
clever to have it called the Mrs. Clause.
The Mrs. Clause, yeah. It's
Although, again, it's a bit of entrapment because it was in such tiny writing. Like, inside
it's 100% entrapment. And then Bernard tries to blame it all on a character we never saw until this film.
But he's
900
years old. Surely would have...
This guy here, who never mentioned this before. I'm like...
I guess it raises the question of how long the previous Santa had been around.
I mean...
Because these are all hundreds and hundreds of years old elves. They're like, what happened to the previous Mrs. Claus?
That's a good point.
It's like she wasn't there when they showed up last time. Did she just suddenly get kicked out?
Maybe once Santa died,
she just died as well.
She dies too.
She disappears as well. She's like in the middle of something and she gets Thanos snapped. Maybe.
These are all questions I hope are answered in the upcoming Disney Plus original series.
That's what I'm hoping for as well. The other thing that I really didn't love is how the reindeer are treated this film. You know, in the first one, comedy's like super straight, like they're all treated with respect. This one, they're like full on puppets, comic relief, making a bunch of noises, farting and pooping.
I don't mind one of them. Like, what's the
Chet?
Chet. If it was just Chet,
yeah.
If it was just Chet, I could be fine. But I don't like turning
comic into
comic
relief.
Yeah.
Into
comic relief. But I could handle Chet because I do find the few Chet, like this, especially towards the end where like Bernard whistles, it's like I don't mind all that. So,
but yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. And you know, we got Charlie in this film, who I think is an interesting story development. It's like this kid whose dad's been away like most of the year, super upset and like kind of going down a bad way. Although all his graffiti is like super pro Christmas, which is kind of weird.
Well, it's, yeah, they don't do they. There's two directions they could have, I guess, taken his teenage like storyline, which is, he could have been like, screw Christmas, like he suddenly got like angst, like my dead Santa Claus, so he suddenly hates Christmas. Like they turned the character a complete 180 from how he was in the first film.
one.
But no, that's just more of a daddy issues.
Yeah.
But he's still totally like, Christmas is great.
Christmas is great. Anyone who doesn't like Christmas is the worst, and thus everybody needs to know that they're the worst. Also, how did he not hear the principal come into that gym?
I think
you're not keeping track of time, you know?
No. I do like that scene though, just how you hear the ladder and then the clunk of his like heels coming up the steps. And just I kind of like it.
Yeah. Where did he get the rope and the there's a lot of questions. And how did he get the Christmas tree graffiti so good? Like, it doesn't seem like a spray can would give you such precise.
You'd be surprised what spray cans can do. Have you seen some of this, the art?
Not in such the short period of time that you assume they're trying to do it in.
I don't know. He could have been there for an hour or more. Hours. I don't
know. Also introduced to this film, the Council of what are they called?
I don't know.
Cancel of legendary figures, or as the precursor to the Tooth Fairy and what's the animated one with Jack Frost? I'm trying to think.
See, that's what when they announced that, I actually thought it was a spin-off. The legendary Guardians or whatever.
Yeah, the Guardians.
Yeah,
I think it's called.
Whatever that's called. When they announced that movie, I legit thought it was a spin-off to this.
Rise of the Guardians. That's it. Yeah, I could understand because obviously they're very similar groups of people involved. But really, it's the Tooth Fairy, played by Art LaFleur.
Mole Man.
The Molinator.
Molinator.
But the thing is, the director of this film, Michael Lembeck, would go on to direct the Tooth Fairy, starring Dwayne The Rock Johnson. So,
Yeah.
That's where you got.
I don't think it's related.
It's all tied in, I haven't seen the Tooth Fairy, but I believe it's connected,
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen the Tooth Fairy?
I have not seen the Tooth Fairy.
Well, I think maybe we need to watch it. I don't know, when is a
new
tooth
podcast,
appropriate?
Explosion Network, Easter.
What isn't a... The Tooth Fairy doesn't exactly have a day, so, I mean, it's kind of hard to figure out when.
Yeah, tooth... Oh.
Is there a tooth-related holiday?
No, I guess not. You Googling tooth-related holiday?
Yeah. Apparently, the 28th of February is Tooth Fairy Day.
What? No, that's bullshit.
No.
Do you know there's a Tooth Fairy 2?
Yeah, I think I did know there was a second Tooth Fairy movie.
Larry the Cable Guy.
Makes sense. Him and The Rock, interchangeable.
Larry the Cable Guy also starred in Jingle All the Way too.
Yeah, Larry the Cable Guy, Arnold Schwarzenegger, interchangeable. Yeah, National Tooth Fairy Day. 28th of February. Or August 20... Wait, I've got differing... Another one says August 22nd. I don't know if that's true or not. Wait, it's celebrated twice a year? Man, Tooth Fairy's got it made. Bullshit. Anyway, back to Christmas. Even though, the council obviously have a reasonably large influence on the movie. It is interesting. It's interesting that Peter Boyle plays Father Time because obviously he played Scott Calvin's boss in the first movie, so that's a fun tie-in. Because Aisha Tyler is Mother Nature. Kevin Pollak is Cupid. Anything else you want to discuss about the Santa Claus 2?
When he chucks that toaster off the edge and he just goes flying with him, that just goes to show that that's torture and you shouldn't do that to kids.
I mean, what that tells you is that adult teeth are much more held in and got stronger roots than kid teeth. That would be my thing.
All that, yeah. True.
Yeah, and then, Charlie does remove one of his teeth, and you would assume he would have all his adult teeth at that point. And he got very lucky that, Santa got him one of his front teeth for Christmas. Yeah.
I also enjoy the start of this movie. And just the reveal to when, Santa comes up. It's a big reveal when he walks from behind the telescope thing, the plane flying over, listening to the music and all that. I think it's a fun start to the movie. That's
a lot of fun. We do have a lot of the toy Santa stuff is quite fun. The idea of him being all these kids are misbehaving. They all need coal this Christmas. And they're just turning all these... The image of all these children having to mine coal is kind of messed up.
Little Susie put a booger in her brother's soup. That's not very nice.
Yeah.
She deserves coal.
Yeah. And Bernard calling him out and saying he's even got a plastic tushy. That's, I mean...
And he takes a step back.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
And then we do get a tie, when Scott and Toy Santa are fighting on the sleigh, Toy Santa calls him a sad little man. Sad, strange little man. Just like Buzz calls Woody in Toy Story. That's a nice reference. Yeah. Also love the football scene of Toy Santa. like not understanding the rule and just messing up all these elves.
Yeah, I mean,
Messing up all these small children.
he could score right at the end. Like, maybe some of those kids you could understand they were in his way, but the one at the end, he could just score.
No, he just chased him down. He wanted to take him out.
He wanted to take him out, yeah.
Yeah. And, they do give him a messed up ending of, him being shrunk down and then sold, put out with other Christmas decorations.
It is a mess up. It's kind of funny. He's like, why are we dancing like this? If we're going to dance, we should do it like this.
All right. Any other thoughts on the Santa Claus 2 before we finish up?
No. It's fun enough, as I said. But yeah.
It's fun enough, yeah.
This is the one I've definitely, I've watched these Santa Claus a part-ton, as we discussed last week. I've watched this one a decent amount of times. That I felt like nothing would surprise me. I'm like, yeah, like watching the movie, like I know it because I did. But yeah, it'll be interesting to go into next week because I think I've only watched that one twice, maybe. And from memory, I don't like Santa Claus 3.
I've never seen Santa Claus 3, so we're in for a thing. But the last thing, Molly Shannon is in this movie as Scott's first date, who is bonkers.
Just a little bit too.
Loves Santa a bit too much.
Yeah. A little bit too much, yeah.
A bit too outgoing.
Yeah.
Singing her remix of Shania Twain's Man, I Feel Like a Woman in the middle of a restaurant.
It's a thing.
It happened. All right. Let us know what you think of the Santa Claus 2 by going to explosion.com/Twitter or jump to Discord at explosion.com/Discord. If you want to help us out here at an Explosion Network Christmas, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or on Podchaser to tell people about the show. And if you like this episode, Thor's worth $1, head on over to our Cove page at explosion.com/support. So next week we'll be watching the Santa Claus 3, The Escape Clause. So until then, remember, seeing isn't believing, believing is seeing.